This is the April meeting of the MTA Bridges and Tunnels Committee, the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority for short. Welcome. Do we have public speakers?
We do not.
Is there a motion to, does anybody have any comments or changes to the minutes of our last meeting?
No, I moved them.
All in favor? The minutes are adopted. Do we have any changes in the work plan, sir?
No, we don't.
Would you like to address us?
I'd like to move it along and have a presentation on the, or summary given by Mr. Moretti, starting on page 15, Report on Operations.
Mr. Moretti.
Yes, sir. Good morning. In February, we had 20,159,000 crossings, which was an increase of more than 1 million crossings from the prior year, or about 5%. Looking at what factors may have affected the travel in February, we note that precipitation was much less this year than the prior year. In February of 2010, we had record snowfall of over 26 inches compared to only 4 inches this February. On the looking at the price of gas was $3.32 this February, which was 53 cents higher than the prior February and a nickel higher than the prior month of January 2011. Looking at customer trends, Easy Pass crossings for the month were from year to year up 10.7%, which was 1,542,000 crossings more than the prior February. Cash customers were down more than 11% compared to the prior February. Passenger vehicle travel was 5.4%, and trucks increased by 4% versus the prior year. At our crossings, all crossings were up versus last February. The increases ranged from 1.3% at the Rockaways to 8.7% at the Henry Hudson. Now to take an early look at the month of March. In March, we had approximately 23.9 million crossings, which was about 600,000 less than March of 2010. And that's my report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
No questions. We'll move along to page 27, Easy Pass Performance Report. Don Spiro.
Thanks, Jim. Our Easy Pass market share was 79.4% in February, which is up nearly 4 percentage points from a year ago. This follows January, when it was up about 3.6 percentage points. We think the stronger growth this year than in the past is likely due to a combination of the December 30th toll increase, as well as lower discretionary cash travel, which Dave alluded to, combination of the weather earlier this year and the higher gas prices. More than 10,000 Easy Pass accounts were open in February, including more than 2,000 on-the-go accounts, about 23% of the total, and more than 94,000 on-the-go tags have now been sold since the program began. That concludes the Easy Pass report. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the financial report, which begins on page 33. Yes, sir.
The on-the-go accounts, have we been marketing them in Spanish?
We're starting that effort now.
Because I noticed that the Bronx's participation
Yes.
Is pretty light, and we might want to consider working with the borough president and some of the local officials to market the program in the Bronx so they can take advantage of the discounts.
Right. Did
Well,
Commissioner Murdler plant that question in you?
I'm a Bronx boy, too.
The program has been emphasized in the Bronx, and Queens, where market share is lowest, around the Whitestone and the Tri-Borough Bronx. So that's where the program is most prevalent from the beginning. I mean, we're taking overall steps now to market Easy Pass in Spanish and appeal to those customers.
If you could let myself know, and I think the rest of the committee know what efforts are being done in that regard. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, that's okay.
My silly question, which I'm sure Andrew knows the answer to, is in the other Easy Pass agencies, there's a New York State Bridge Authority as opposed to the Thruway Authority. What is the Bridge Authority?
The Bridge Authority operates
The which?
the Bear Mountain Bridge, the Mid-Hudson Bridge.
Rip Van Winkle.
Right.
Okay.
I think 6 upstate.
All right. Carry on.
Okay. The February financial report, which begins on page 33. Toll revenue for the first 2 months is down about 1.3%. against the budget, reflection mainly of the lower traffic we saw in January due to the storms. February revenue was down 0.3% against the budget, which we believe is due to the lingering effects of the winter weather. And again, we may be seeing the effect of higher gas prices. Total expenses were down in February about 14.7%. That's primarily due to the timing of purchases across almost all expense categories. Year-to-date, our expenses are about $9.5 million below budget. Labor expenses are down about $3.5 million, which includes lower overtime expenses of about $900,000 or 20%, and non-labor expenses are down a little over $6 million. Our support to mass transit was approximately $133.3 million through February, about $12 million better than planned.
Almost I believe every other agency had higher overtime expenses in January and February. You bucked the trend. You went the other way. And despite everything, your contributions to mass transit have improved. You're ahead of budget on the bottom line. And as I have said frequently, whenever anything goes extremely well, the board takes credit for it. Whenever things go badly, it's the staff's fault. But you guys are making us look very good. Very well done.
On behalf of all the employees at Bridges and Tunnels, we thank you.
Thanks. I have one more report to summarize, and that's the final review of the 2010 year-end operating results, which begins on page 45. I'm going to go over this very quickly. We reported much of this information to you already over the last couple of months. So just to briefly summarize, our total revenue in 2010 was $1.417 billion, which was about even with our final estimate. Traffic totaled $291.7 million, which was also just about even with the final estimate. Non-reimbursable expenses were approximately $383 million, $20 million below the final forecast. Labor expenses were about $3 million lower. That's due primarily to a combination of vacancies and overtime savings. Non-labor savings were about $17 million lower, primarily due to lower spending in maintenance and other operating contracts and professional service contracts, some of that due to timing. And finally, our support to mass transit in 2010 was $842.6 million, almost $40 million better than our final estimate. That concludes that report.
Once again, congratulations.
No questions. We'll move along to page 69, capital program, project status. Engineer Joe Keane. Joseph.
Good afternoon. The capital report, as Jim said, is on page 69 for March. In March, we really had very minor commitments made, only $3 million, bringing our year-to-date committed amount to $38.4 million against a planned year-to-date of $53.6 million. Most of the commitments were small in-house force accounts. There was one commitment related to RK 74, resurfacing of RFK bridge decks for $0.9 million. There were no completions or closeouts in March. Some award date changes are noted on the page. The most significant one being the Whitestone project, BW 89, which I'm happy to say we received very good bid results on that. Continues a trend that we've been seeing with very competitive bids in the capital program. So that is now forecast for a June award. Other than that, if there are any questions, that concludes my report.
I just noticed on the bottom, with regard to the concrete deck on the Throgs Neck, where because of the weather, we have a slight delay in the completion date on that. In view of the holidays and everything else, I assume we change our schedule to reflect those dates as traffic moves, especially on the weekends, in that regard.
All of the planned operating and engineering movements, let's call them, are coordinated a week or two in advance. We plan for the holidays. Basically, we'll staff at a higher level and engineers and their projects will be stopped during those time periods. At best, they'll be centered around a time frame whereby they wouldn't have an impact on any commuter or providing any service to our customers.
Okay, thank you.
One of the projects is $0.8 million to repair the orthotropic deck on the tribal. What is it, something the matter with its teeth, it sounds like. What is that?
To lighten the load on the deck. The engineering community has come up and designed a lightweight metal type deck instead of the old grid and concrete decks. Takes the weight off the cables. So you'll see the term orthotropic as we move along in the capital program. Anything to add, Joe? You can.
No, it's it's a lightweight metal deck, and it has sort of corrugations underneath the deck plate that replace the normal string or floor beam arrangement that you normally have. So it's a sort of a design that incorporates the load-bearing stringers into the deck, and by doing so reduces the dead load, as Jim said, on the cable. It's sort of state-of-the-art for long-span bridges to use orthotropic decks.
All right, I think Andrew understands that. What's next?
We'll go to procurement starting on page 81.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. There are 6 procurements this month totaling about $138.7 million. There is one non-competitive procurement, and it is included on pages 84 and 85. It is a modification to a multi-agency miscellaneous procurement contract with Kronos, Inc. for additional services required by both B&T and Metro-North for each agency's timekeeping system. Based on B&T's collaborative effort with the Business Service Center, our current timekeeping and leave system will be A, integrated with the BSC's PeopleSoft system so that B&T's payroll can be processed at the BSC, and B, modified and upgraded in order to enhance controls for entry and approval of time and absence information for all B&T employees. The total value of our amendment is in the negotiated fixed price amount of $1,237,350. Metro-North's amendment will add $300,000 for Kronos' continued performance of repair and maintenance services, professional and consulting services, and for the purchase of hardware and software products. Next, there are 5 competitive procurements. Starting on page 88 in your books, the first is a multi-agency public work contract for miscellaneous construction on an as-needed basis for B&T, NYCT, LIRR, and MTA Capital Construction. As described in the staff summary, each agency will render awards to various contractors in aggregate not to exceed amounts of $36 million for B&T, $50 million for NYCT, $10 million for LIRR, and $30 million for MTACC. All contracts will be for a duration of 3 years. If you'd please turn to page 92. This item includes 3 personal service contracts with WSP Sales Transportation and Infrastructure, HNTB New York Engineering and Architecture PC, and Hardesty and Hanover LLP, who will provide biennial bridge inspection and miscellaneous design services at the Throgs Neck, Bronx Whitestone, and the Marine Parkway and Cross Bay bridges. The inspections are required by the New York State Department of Transportation. Contract awards are $2,113,574 to WSB Cells for the Throgs Neck Bridge, $1,873,720 to HNTB for the Bronx Whitestone Bridge, and $1,399,124 to Hardesty and Hanover for the Marine Parkway and Cross Bay bridges. Each of those contracts is for a duration of 2 years.
I presume all of those costs are substantially less than the inspection costs for the Tappan Zee Bridge.
As far as we know.
Hear, hear. A summary of the third item is on pages 95 and 96. It is a personal service contract with PB Americas, Inc. to provide a feasibility study for tunnel modernization and improvements at the Queens Midtown and Brooklyn Battery tunnels at a cost of $1,942,368 over a period of 2 years, 6 months.
No, we can end it.
Next, on page 97,
Sadly.
there is a modification to a personal service contract with PB Americas, Inc. and Charles H. Sells, who are performing as a joint venture. And the work is for additional funding for design support services during construction and an allowance for unanticipated design work during construction under Project BW89C, which is the replacement of the Queens approach at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge in the amount of $2,695,189. A summary of the fifth and last item is on page 98. It is a modification to a public work contract with Conti of New York, LLC, in the amount of $1,147,038 for additional work under contract BW89, described as replacement of the Bronx approach and miscellaneous repairs to the Queens approach at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. As a final point, there are no ratifications in this month's agenda. Unless you have any questions, that concludes my report.
Anyone have any questions on any of these procurements? The procurements have all been moved. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the procurements carry.
And that ends our report to the committee.
Anyone
Chairman,
have
I
any-
just wanted to thank the staff and the president for their very hard work on the cross-island access point to the Throgs Neck Bridge. For those of us from Long Island, that is a major way we get on and off the island, and the improvements that have occurred over the last month have been substantial. I've heard them from a lot of different people, including my friends at the Auto Club, who actually commended you for once. I couldn't believe it in that regard. But I want to thank you all. It was a tremendous job ahead of schedule, and it has really alleviated a major traffic issue for those of us from the island.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will see you all in May.